Hi everybody, welcome to our celebration event. I'm Beth Kidd, I'm Senior Development Support Manager at Cymru Africa, and thank you for taking time out of your lunch break to join us today. I'm going to hand over to my colleague Kath, who will tell you what the plan for the session is. Thank you.
Hi everyone, welcome to our celebration event. Whilst we are warming up, I'd be really grateful if you can use the chat to tell us about a success or something that you're proud of to do with fundraising. So I'm just going to stick mine in there. As you probably know, I work for Cymru Africa. I also work for Byd-eang Cymru, and I loved it. The first time I got an unrestricted donation from a trust, it was fantastic. I love that feeling. So that's my share that I'm going to put in the chat. So please do use the space to put in something that you feel proud of or that you've enjoyed into the chat. I would like to welcome our guests today. We have with us Jill, Robert, Peter, and also John. John is having some difficulty with internet connection, so I'm hoping that he's going to be able to join us. I think he's tried to find somewhere with better internet connection. So they're going to introduce themselves in a second, but first I'm going to do the housekeeping. So today's event is recorded. We would really love it if you could leave your cameras off so that we can see you, so that you can put your hand up and say hi and ask questions directly to us. But if you're not comfortable with us with that, then you can turn your camera off. There's at the bottom of your screen, there's a stop video. So you can do that if you don't want to be seen. And similarly, if you don't want your name to be shared, then you can change your name to Anon, or just your organization name if you like. If you have any serious concerns about today's event, we are one of our partners, WCIA. They're our senior partner. So if you visit their website, you can look at you can search for their whistleblowing policy, and you'll see there where you could report anything that you have any concerns about. I can see that Wendy from Hands Around the World, you're a trustee standing in for your grant manager. You're still waiting for results from the first two applications. Yes, it's always an edgy moment, isn't it? You've put in the application, then you've got to wait for the results and see how that's going to go. So good luck with that, Wendy. I hope you have some success. Okay, I guess I just wanted to start with the fundraising can be very challenging and it can be demoralizing. And so we wanted this event to be looking at some of the good things that have come out of fundraising, and for these 5 people who are with us today to share their experiences. The Wales African community is amazing. It's quite a small community. There's not a huge number of charities and lots of very, very small groups and organisations. But over the past 3 years, Cymru Africa are aware of Wales Africa community having raised on average £560,000 a year, which is a huge amount. And that's only the people that Cymru Africa has helped with and given support to. There's loads of people who are fundraising huge money and we don't know about it because, you know, you won't necessarily tell us about it, or not somebody that we're in close contact with. So there is a huge amount of money coming into the sector and going towards doing really good work. So I know it can be disheartening, but there's a lot of really positive stuff happening. I'm going to ask you guys to introduce yourself now. John has arrived. So John, able to take yourself off mute. Hopefully we'll be able to hear you. Otherwise, can we please start with Robert? Can you please introduce yourself and please briefly describe your fundraising experience, very briefly?
My name is Robert Musa. I'm the chairman of Zimbabwe Newport Volunteering Association. We are based in Newport and we operate both in Newport and Zimbabwe. My fundraising experience, I'll start on the negative side where we missed lots of opportunities, because in Newport, we do organize the Africa Day event, which attracts around 1,000 people. And also we do football tournaments, which attract more than 500 young people and their families, including the Refugee Week. We've been hosting these events for the past 10 years, but we never took the opportunity to use the events as a fundraising platform until when we did our mentoring program with Cymru Africa. So we had the opportunity to work with an expert from the Welsh Institute of Fundraising. This is 3 years ago, and things have turned around now. All our events now, we make sure we are doing fundraising, things like cake bake, just donations, because all our events are free, and we also provide free food. So we've been now raising an average of more than 500 every event. On top of that now, we've also registered with One Lottery. And also, for the first time, we've got a website with a donation link. I think we're doing well now.
Excellent. Thank you, Robert. Thank you for that. That's great. I think John is there. John, can you hear us? If you can, could you unmute yourself and just introduce yourself and very briefly let us know your fundraising experience? Thank you.
Thank you so much. Can you hear me?
Yes,
great.
we can hear you.
My name is John Sebale. I'm from Uganda, Eastern Africa, and I work with Kempop, Uganda, with our sister organization, which is Kempop Cardiff. We are dealing in, mint production. Okay, that was our first project, basically promoting mint production in rural communities to eradicate rural poverty and also provide sustainable livelihoods, especially for the women and for the youth. And also out of that project, we also came up with an innovation of doing sanitizer, which actually we got funding for, thanks to the Welsh government for that. About my funding experience, we have realized that we needed to spread our net beyond just the financial bit of it, but also basically funding or in-kind contribution. So most of our projects don't have full-time staff, if that there are very few, but much of the support we get is in-kind. So we have had to spread the net. We are getting radio coverage free, local radio stations. We go, we do publicity, we do campaigns there about what we do for free. That is in kind. And also what members put as well is in kind. So beyond the financials, we've also gone ahead to look at what in kind support we can always get. At the moment, for example, we are working with Makerere University and also with Namulonge. Namulonge is a research institute. They are helping us out with research. And also Makerere is helping us out with product development for the mint. So basically that has been my experience with fundraising, that we don't look at one angle, but we spread out. Someone may not give you the money, the hard cash, but again, they can offer the training or can offer the venue. For example, where do the training from? The churches give us sometimes these venues for free, or a hotel. So yeah, that has been my bit. Thank you.
Thank you, John. That's great. And shall we go to Peter next, because you work with John? Thank you.
Yes, my name's Peter. I coordinate the project that John's been talking about. It's called Kempop, Community Enterprise Model for Plant Oil Production, which may sound a sort of unlikely contender for foreign aid. But as John explained, the idea is to create the opportunity for livelihoods in what is a country of depressed agriculture, high unemployment, where something novel was indicated. And we are a group of academics in Cardiff University, linking up with a group in Makerere University. And the advantage of having that sort of link is that we can apply for not only community-based funding, but also potentially science research-based funding. I'll come on to that in a minute. We started our fundraising activity, if you like, in 2016, and Hub Cymru Africa gave us a grant of £1,000 to start the project off. That was followed by the following year, £5,000, and then we went to Wales for Africa, and we managed to get £15,000. So on the basis of this initial funding, we were able to establish mint farming within Uganda, created a distillery, and we started producing minted products, drinks, personal care products, an insect repellent, and so on. So then to focus on the science, we wanted to ask the question, how do plants generate these oils which are potentially so valuable? Can we manipulate the biochemistry of the plants to increase oil production and create what we could call a supermint, which would be a very, very valuable crop for people to grow in the rural areas of Uganda? And so we applied to the Research Council for funding, and we managed to get £1 million into 2019, which sounds a lot of money, but you know, through the university system, it was you know, quite a bonus. We could do some serious scientific research on the basis of that. Incidentally, that's just been drastically cut back by the recent government foreign aid cuts. But I don't want to dwell on that because this is a happy event, and we're trying to adjust to the fact that we've got a limited budget going forward. But also, John mentioned spin-out projects, which have been possible on the back of this core funding. John has developed a smoke-free cooking stove, which we're trying to roll out in Uganda and demonstrate the health benefits of that. And we've currently got a grant from Wales and Africa, which he mentioned, and we'll talk about later, about hand sanitizer, which links up with the COVID issue. So, you know, these ideas are possible to put in place once you have a track record of funding and people start to believe that you've got a working team which can deliver on the ground. So basically my message from this about funding is that it's all been possible thanks to that initial grant of £1,000 that we got from Hub Cymru Africa 5 years ago, and thank you very much for that. You know, you can start small and build from that base.
Lovely, Peter. Thank you very much. That was insightful. Jill, could you please give us a brief introduction? Thank you.
Yeah, I'm Jill. I'm one of the trustees of Hey to Timbuktu, which is the twinning trust of Hay-on-Wye and Timbuktu, which have joined together in 2007. And the link up was due to both cities' loves of books and manuscripts. That was our common starting point. We, as the trust, we mainly raise money for education, particularly for girls who are often excluded from education in Timbuktu. And the largest amount of money we raised was through DFID, now Foreign Office, from the Small Charities Challenge Fund. That came with its challenges, certainly, as a fund to apply to and manage, but it was a great advantage to be able to get that amount of money, which goes a long way in the relatively small projects that we do. My background is an arts background. I was director of an arts company in London for 30 years before coming into Hey to Timbuktu, and that was raising lots of money through EU funds, Arts Council, and lots of arts funding. And there's a lot of crossover, I think, between the arts and the charity funding world. So yeah, that's me.
Lovely, Jill, thank you. I think we'll stay with you, if that's okay, for the first question. So, Beth will agree with me that here at Hub Cymru Africa, one of the first questions we get when we're speaking to groups is, who will fund me? And we do research and we have a look at what grant giving organisations are out there. And we do a first kind of sense check where we look at the criteria of that grant-driven organisation and try to understand if charities that are asking us for help, whether they fit that criteria. But obviously the charities themselves have to look a bit deeper into it, because they know themselves and their organisations better than we do, and their projects better than we do. So from your experience, Jill, when you're doing research about an organisation that you're going to approach to ask them for funds, what other things do you look at? There's the criteria, but what other research do you do?
I mean, initially the criteria is really important, because we all know our organisations internally quite well, but we're also all probably fairly desperate to find funding. So we've got to be, I think, very clinical about looking at, do we really fit? Because I think so often we can read someone's criteria and we can read our project into it without it necessarily really fitting. And, looking at other people that those people have funded and looking at their policies and things really closely, just to make sure that you really fit. Because I think a lot of us have probably ever spent a lot of time making applications to organisations who we think ought to fund us, but who we just don't quite fit. And as the world has become more competitive for funds, it becomes even more important to find that fit. And I think the biggest difficulty often for organisations also is, if you can get a face into that organisation, say hello to someone, meet them somewhere in some networking event or something, it kind of ups the ante for you massively. And as soon as people meet and there's a kind of a connection and you can tell someone about your project, it makes such a big difference to how they then receive your application. So I think all of those things are quite important. And in terms of researching your funders, there's also the element of, are these funders right for us ethically and morally? If we're a protest organisation and our funders in the UK suddenly say, oh, well, we've got some funding from an oil company and they've been protesting against an oil company or something, then we're causing them a huge problem. And we have to be very sensitive to what our what our partners need as well. So there's a lot of thinking, I think, around that, and sort of having not being used by funders as well in some of those more sponsorship ranging relationships, which, we all also have to look at these days.
Yeah, so. I think you made a good couple of points there. Certainly, I've worked for a charity, and we had it was an environmental charity, and we had an agreement, a sponsorship agreement with a fast food chain, and the staff were very unhappy about it, and we had to re-look at whether that was the right partnership for us, because of the clash in terms of values. So it certainly does happen.
Yeah.
I also would like to kind of pull out your point about funders. I mean, they don't bite. Getting to know them, picking up the phone, giving a call, and finding out, what are they interested in funding? How do they approach it? How do they want to be approached? Does get your foot in the door, does get your name recognized then when your letter comes through. So and it helps you with the quality of what you're producing. So I should definitely recommend that. Thank you, Jill.
Yeah, I also think with that, in the arts, certainly most of the sort of a senior role is around marketing and development being the buzzword in the arts for fundraising. And the two things are very closely connected, in the sense that if your outward image isn't giving you the very best example of who you are, then that's also tripping you up with your fundraising. And I think it's quite interesting how those two things are very, very closely knotted together.
Yes.
In terms of externally seen. Yeah.
So part of the due diligence will be to look at you and will be to assess you, and that's done at different levels. But even for a trust, for a small grant, they will, you know, search and have a look at your website, have a look at your social media, you know, just as a cursory kind of glance at looking what you're doing, even if they're not one of the larger funders that does a deeper dive in there as part of their due diligence.
Yeah.
Thanks, Joel. That's a really good point. Robert, hi.
Yeah. Hi.
I wondered whether you could share with us maybe, you know, what you think the biggest lesson that you've learned recently in terms of grant writing. I know that you've been doing some, you've had success with the COVID response recently.
The first thing, we are a small charity, and when we do our proposal, we don't ask for the maximum. We try to ask for a small portion, or then we try to find the difference somewhere. And I think it has worked well when we're competing against the big guns. We go for the smaller amount. And the other thing is the big lesson, we have learned is the terminology. We've been struggling with our language because myself and my trustees, English is our second language. So sometimes it's been difficult to sell our idea out there. So we have asked other people, outsiders, to read our funding applications to see if it's making sense, if they can understand it, rather than giving each other, because already we know what we want to do, but maybe to the funders, it doesn't make sense. So that's the other lesson I've learned. Then also, we go back to our previous applications which were refused, and we look at the feedback. Then we try to upgrade them, because what we find out, most of our applications were just generic. They didn't show that transformation impact, or the sustainability, or growth, or efficiency. So we go back, we still use our refused applications and see how we can improve to the new application. And in addition, I think also the workshops, the trainings by Cymru Africa and Welsh for Africa and WCVA have helped us a lot, especially understanding things like indicators, the outcomes. We can talk with our African partners, but if we don't understand what we want to achieve, the outcomes, it's hard. But I think the success now is coming because now we understand those terms, what we want to achieve.
Thank you, Robert. You made some really lovely points there. Really lovely points. I mean, definitely don't be disheartened if you have, you know, if you have feedback from an application that hasn't been successful. You know, don't write it back. Don't write it off. Write back to them, ask them for feedback on your application, and as Robert said, you know, you learn from it, isn't it? You reflect on it and you take on board that advice, because it can be really disheartening, but definitely push back and ask for feedback. And also,
can I add something? Sorry.
Yeah, please do, Robert. Yeah.
Yes, and also the other important thing which we have learned is the timeline. What we find now is we'll rather do the budget first, because we used to do the application, then we see the thing we was mentioning now, it's over budget.
Yeah.
So if you start with your budget, then we go to our application now to see this is what we have asked, this is what we can do. And also to start your application in time, not to rush it.
Yeah, I'm definitely guilty of doing it lastminute.com. Definitely. Yeah. And it always takes you longer than you expect it to, doesn't it? Always takes you longer. I was doing an application form recently and I missed a drop down. And when I filled out the form, I then clicked and the drop down asked me for 500 words on that section that I hadn't seen. Because I'd gone through the form, but I hadn't seen this drop down. Where did it come from? So yes, don't leave it to last minute because it's stressful, particularly if you're volunteering your time.
Yes.
I also want to pull up on what you said, Robert, about language. You know, I mean, yes, you're talking about having English as your second language. I'm dyslexic, so I have difficulties with language. And I think the other side of it is that some people are over technical, where if you work in a sector, and sometimes it's very narrow what you work in, and there's lots of jargon and there's lots of abbreviations that we use. And the advice is to not use that. You know, don't use acronyms, don't use jargon. And having somebody who maybe doesn't work in your field reading it gives perspective of, does it make sense? Does what you're saying make sense? As well as things like syntax and being concise. Concise, I would agree, is something to get somebody to proofread on as well. And focusing on your outcomes. Robert, that's an excellent point, because that's what the funder wants to know. They want to know what your outcomes are going to be. They want to know what is going to be the end point. So yeah, thank you, Robert. Really, really lovely points. Peter, can I come to you now? We wanted to ask, you've talked a lot about partnership and your partner is here with us today. And so I guess I wanted to know, what role does partnership play in the success of fundraising and how?
Yes, partnership. That's really essential, to have a working relationship with a team of reliable, trusted people who you know can deliver on the ground. Now, we already had contacts in Uganda when we started this through the university system and through personal links. And we were keen expertise in plant chemistry and food processing in our particular case. So that's important, but also you need contacts within the local community, make things happen. You need leverage with community leaders, for example, women's groups. You need those contacts. And we particularly needed a direct line to the local farmers. Now, we can't do that from sitting in a chair in Cardiff. We on the ground, so that the project becomes community-led and is not seen then as something that's imposed from outside. So our partnership with our colleagues in Uganda has been absolutely essential right from the beginning. And over time, you build a working relationship with your partner, and you develop this sort of trusted, reliable system. And from that, you can develop new ideas, and the spin-out projects that I've mentioned that came from our initial application have been possible because of that working partnership. We know that we can trust the guys out there to do the job in the way that works for the people on the ground, and we're not trying to tell them exactly how to run day to day the business out there, and it becomes a community-led project. And I think that then appeals to funders. When you go back for the next application, you can point to your working relationship. You can say how you built up this consortium of interest, and I think that speaks volumes.
Yes, thank you very much. That's great. Trevor, you have a message in the chat saying that he'd like to speak. Trevor, do you mind? I've just got one more question for John, and then we're going to open up to the floor, and then we'll be able to take some questions. So if you'd like, you can put your questions in the chat, or in a minute we'll allow you to raise your hand. So 1 second, sorry. John.
Yes, yes.
Now, I'm not sure if I'm going to pronounce this properly, but you've got a hygiene project. Is it Byd-eang?
Yes.
Thank you. So it's been led very much by you in Uganda. And I wondered if you could talk a little bit about why you think that fundraising has been successful for that. This leads on very well from what Peter was just saying, doesn't it?
Thank you so much. The word buyonjo means hygiene. In this case, we came up with a proposal to produce hand sanitizer for the rural communities, especially schools, places of worship, marketplaces that didn't have much access to such COVID fighting tools like sanitizer. So our project was branded Buyonjo, which is a local word for hygiene. Why I think our project was successful, one, is it was already a running project. We had previously gotten funding of over £6,000, which had been injected in the infrastructure, that is to fabricate the equipment, because much of our equipment here is locally fabricated. Again, that is done intentionally to create jobs for the local communities. So much of work here is locally done. So a lot had been put already. So we showed commitment to the project since our funds already been committed in terms of infrastructure. Number two, I think it was also quite innovative. These were COVID times. Well, we're still in COVID times. And that was an innovative solution. And I must say, again, over 80% or 85% of the ingredients that we use are locally sourced, including the perfume, which is, well, a product of the distillation system, that is the hydrosol. Ideally, this hydrosol could be just thrown out. Now we are getting the hydrosol as an input in another process. So it acts as the distilled water in our hand sanitizer. So basically, we created a zero waste system. So I think it was an innovative project. That's why it went through. But also important is the partnerships, as my colleague Peter said. We have the University of Cardiff. We have Peter and the team out there. We also work with partners here. I talked about the local radio stations. We partnered with them to run adverts about hygiene and how to prevent COVID and all that. So we have a couple of partnerships. I think also this gave us mileage. And also most important was that our project was inclusive. That is, the youth are involved, the women are involved, the disabled people are involved, people with disabilities are involved. Basically, everyone in their capacity is involved. So it was quite an inclusive project. For example, we're using alcohol, but the Muslim community does not want to use alcohol in the sanitizer. So we came up with, again, something that, they are comfortable using, again, for inclusion. So I think inclusion was also a bonus for this project. Yeah, that's what I made us go through with this. Thank you.
John, that's lovely, and it's lovely to hear how inclusive you have been, and it's definitely worthwhile, isn't it? It definitely increases the impact of your project as well as the breadth of it. Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much for that. I can see that some people are wanting to open up from the floor now, so I'm going to take the spotlight off the speaker so that we can all see each other. If you're happy to have your screen on, so that your camera on, so that we can all see each other, that would be great. And then I would and then we can sorry, I'm getting confused with things. Okay. And then we can ask questions. So Trevor, if you can unmute yourself, would you like to start us off with some questions you have for our
It's
chair?
not actually a question. I wanted to carry on the importance of partnership, because I run a very small not-for-profit organisation called Responsible Assistance, and it's been going since about 2003. Anyway, in 2013, we did Responsible Assistance assisted disabled people in disaster situations all over the world. And we heard about an area of Kenya where it's very remote and there's no social welfare, and there were some issues. So we did an exploratory visit. A couple of volunteers went out there and checked out the situation. And we formed a partnership with the Kubwezi Disabled People's Organisation. And over the years, it's grown, it changes its format. There's a lot of trust involved. And we, through the Wales and Africa, Wales from Africa funding project, what we realised that it's no good just giving sort of equipment or whatever over there. I set up this project called Fursha meaning opportunity in Swahili, and we funded. I got some money from Wales from Africa. We funded 3 cooperatives of disabled people and their families to be trained and to start up their own little commercial enterprises to create a sustainable future. And we just finished doing our pilot when the pandemic broke out. And I noticed that there was some funding available, some emergency COVID funding. So I put in for a little bit of money on there, and we got it. And the reason why, because when all the transport stopped, things stopped being able to be distributed around the country. Medication, a lot of food. It was difficult to get food. There was literally people starving. And I managed with that funding. We bought sent it over there, and our partners bought a couple of motorcycles because the terrain is very rough and it's very remote. And he needed either 4-wheel drive or to pass by foot. And the communities are really spread out. We started distributing the first organisations. One of them was manufacturing face masks, another one was, a lot of them had little small allotments and small holdings, and they were distributing food, and we were making soap and candles. And it just goes to show that when you've got a partner over there who can keep it all together, it's amazing, and it works very well. And so that's basically what I wanted to say.
Thanks, Trevor. Appreciate that. Thank you. Does anybody have anything that they'd like to add to that? So whilst we're waiting for people to think of some questions, I have another question for the group. You can, the first person to put their hand up and speak, I guess. So I think, what one thing must people remember when fundraising? If you were to say, remember this one thing, what would it be? What would be a key point that you would take away? Yes, Peter.
If I can chip in, I think I want to echo something that Robert said, because I think you've got to have a vision of exactly what you are trying to achieve. But as well as that, you need a kind of roadmap, to use an overused phrase perhaps, but you've got to have specific goals and targets or milestones that you can demonstrate can be achieved along the way towards achieving your overall vision. And in our case, we had a vision of a need of creating economic opportunities for people within the local community, and we could see a market opportunity there. But it's that you need a way of achieving that. You need milestones to bring you towards that overall goal. And if you can articulate that within your application, I think that's more likely to chime in with the funders' requirements. And I think Robert made the same point, that you need to identify specific things that you can achieve, as well as having your overall overarching vision to make it all worthwhile. Does that help?
Yeah, absolutely, Peter. I absolutely agree with that. And there's some tools to help you with that as well. I mean, I would advocate for a theory of change. a tool. Sometimes they're quite complicated, but you can have some really easy ones that just help you think what are the steps, of what is the big picture, and then what are the steps it will take to get there. So yeah, definitely, thank you. Jill, you put your hand up.
Yeah. I think the other thought, sort of following on from the points being made there, are that have your project first, and have your project in your hand that you are really confident in, and it's the thing you want to do. And don't be swayed by sort of in your funding research seeing something, thinking, oh, I could apply for that for something else. And I think with funding, it's very easy to get sort of move off the point sometimes if you see a fund that nearly fits your project, one of your projects that you've got in the back of your mind, and kind of really focusing on the project that you're trying to fundraise for is quite an important point with that. And also making sure it fits the scale. I think that's the other thing that Robert's talked about a little bit, about doing small projects. And there's huge value in small projects. And getting huge projects isn't always the best. There's a place for you that's just right, where you fit. And it's great if, you know, you've got a university behind you and you've got the ability to get lots and lots of money to do the relevant work. That's fantastic. But a lot of us are not in a position where we can manage anything like that. And so we have to kind of find our place, in a sense, in where we fit in financially into what funders are offering out there.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really good point, Jill, about, you know, making sure that you can manage that, the size of that grant. Beth, you put your hand up.
Yeah, it's just sort of following on from what Jill said, and we've said, you know, obviously fundraising is a very competitive environment, and as Cass said earlier, you know, sort of getting yourself in front of or speaking to funders is really important. But if you're not able to do that, how do you make your application stand out? You know, why are you doing this project? What's the need? Why, you know, are you meeting the most needy? Why is this project going to provide solutions to that need? Why are you the best people to be doing it? You know, have you, you know, talk about your partnership and how long you've been working together and what your expertise is. So, you know, really try and make yourself stand out from all the other grant applications that they receive. You know, how are you going to measure it, and show the best side of yourself that you can, really. That's all I was going to add.
Thank you, Beth. That's great. John, Robert, do you have anything to add to this? What one piece of advice, if you had to give one piece of advice to somebody, don't forget to do this?
I think mine is establishing strong partnerships, both where the project is going to be implemented and also with the other partners. So we need to have very good partnerships and also be inclusive. That's my bit.
Thank you, John.
I'll just add on the checklist and the requirements to see that do you fit in this application, but at the same time also be prepared to take the risk. You don't know what's going to happen. Sometimes it's gambling. They will love your proposal, although you didn't fit 100%.
Yes, so sticking to your project, and maybe the funder will be interested in that on its own. Yes, as its own thing. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to put in the chat a question, which is, what would you say to someone feeling demotivated by an unsuccessful grant application? Sorry, my syntax is bad there. I missed an am. But if everybody can type in there and let us know, then that will be great. And we'll be able to share that information and kind of share a bit of support for each other. I think for me, it would be about, you know, not losing heart, taking advice from people, you know, finding out why you have been unsuccessful and asking them for feedback, and picking yourself up and dusting yourself off and trying again. Statistically, it is challenging, but definitely worth it in the end. So I'm liking it. Gestin said, try and try again. John is saying, don't lose hope. Use feedback and learning as learning. Fab. Yeah, absolutely. And also, Cymru Africa can help. We are here to help. So Beth is going to put the advice email address into the chat, and you can drop us an email if you want us to have a look at any stage of it. So we can help you with the initial thoughts about how to set up a project and coming up with project ideas and needs assessment, all the way through to reviewing a grant application or helping you find a funder. So do get in touch with us. We are more than happy to help you at any time. And then I would like to share the Mentimeter again because I like it, and because it's Friday and we've had you know, a big week. Everyone has been great. Thank you to everybody who's joined us with the lunch and learns and the one-to-one meetings. I'm going to share some music again and share the screen for the Mentimeter. If you would like,
sorry, Peter.
Someone's got their hand up. I'm so sorry.
You want to say something?
Only very briefly. I can
Please
speak
do,
faster than I can type, and I wanted to just comment on that question about what to do when you fail. We've had a couple of failures as well. It's reflecting what Jill said, that sometimes your idea, your vision may be a very good one, but it doesn't quite fit with the requirements of the fund, that particular funding call. And I think you've just got to be resilient enough to keep looking for the right funding call and make sure it works. You know, we put in an application and it was rejected. It seemed to tick all the boxes, but it actually wasn't what they were looking for. And we're going to come back and try again. But you know, I would say, you know, make sure you've got the right match, as Jill said, between your vision, your project, and the funder that happens to be calling in that particular instance.
Thank you. I think that's a really valuable point. Thank you very much. Okay. Anybody else? Have I missed anybody else? Okay, fab. So there are two things for you to have a look at now. Beth has put in the feedback form. So we'd be really grateful if you could click on that link and take time to do the feedback form. If you have enjoyed the event, you know, we're able to put these events on because of funders. And so, as you all know, because you're all fundraising, we need to be able to show the impact of our work. I would be really grateful if you could let us know and go to the form and fill it in. And if you haven't enjoyed it, then go to the form and let us know how we can do better. Thank you very much. And also, I'm going to share the Mentimeter, but if you want to add your voice to that, my message above Beth is where you can go to the link and click. Here we go. Bear with me 1 second. I've got this on the wrong one. Alrighty. Thank you very much, everybody, for joining us. Thanks for giving us your feedback. If you want to have a look at the Mentimeter outside of this, it's got loads and loads of hints on it. We've got, you know, what are we? We're on 88 tips from people. So I'll stick it in the chat now. And if you want to have a look at it, then you can. Thank you very much to our speakers. Thank you very much to John, Robert, Jill, and Peter. Really appreciate you giving us your time and for sharing your experience with us. It's been really valuable. Thank you very much.
Yeah, well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, Robert. Thank you very much. I hope you have a happy Sunday night.
Yeah.
Nearly
I can't
free.
wait to leave this place.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye. Be safe. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks. Bye.